Wrote about the judgment in 1917. What had happened to your country that opened the door for judgment?
Well, first of all, it was a monarchy with Romanov family. Romanov's family was for about 300 years in thrones of Russia. What's happened with Nicholas II and his family? For some time, they get involved in a very deep witchcraft, and they operate with the spirits, with the spiritual world. Even Mr. Rasputin, famous, who came from nowhere and called himself Little Jesus. That's how he presented himself. He was one of the, well, probably biggest witches, the Russia ever seen. And all that was well adopted, and all that was happening inside the doors of the Tsar's family. So the rotten part of the story starts from the head, as usual, like in any country. When head is rotten, the whole body finally dies out. And,
so the leadership of Russia under the Tsar had gone into paganism, idolatry, witchcraft.
People was involved in the First World War. People was very unhappy from what Tsar doing or not doing for them. And it was a hungry mass who start listen. Few Marxists who was at the time, like Ulyanov Lenin or Trotsky or others, came on waves of socialism and promised people to better life, and this is what's happened. They decide to take this better life with the weapons, and they did it.
Okay, now, Trotsky and Lenin and the Bolshevik Revolution were secretly financed by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the Rockefellers, Wall Street, the same cartel of wickedness that is destroying America right now. Historical records prove without a doubt that those powers and those families and the bankers of America were financing Lenin and Trotsky in the Bolshevik Revolution. So, Shafhid, we have happening right now in America a repeat of what was happening in Russia in 1917.
This is correct, yes. Exact repeat. Maybe with a little flavor of the fascism, but mostly I see the signs of pure communism and complete control of physical and spiritual control of man coming upon this nation. But this will go through very difficult times because many people will rebel, many people will not understand. Many people get confused, but for the very short time, because it's always very brutal. The communism is a brutal machine. They don't care about human life. They smash in human life. They have no interest in churches, and they have no interest in body of Christ. They see body of Christ as an enemy. Lenin called religion is an opium for people, and the opium must be removed by any force. And all churches in Russia was blew up with explosives. Some was changed in the swimming pools or stockpiles of food, and the mockery on God was absolutely unexplainable. I mean, it was just, I don't know. I cannot even describe what they was doing with the Christian people in Russia.
The church in Russia, churches were seized, taken over by the communists. They abolished Bibles, destroyed many Bibles, destroyed many churches, turned churches into government buildings. There was anti-church propaganda. Thousands, I don't know what the number is, perhaps tens, hundreds of thousands of Russian priests were either murdered or tortured or put into labor camps.
Yes, I heard the numbers between 400,000 and 500,000.
400,000 to 500,000 church pastors were murdered, tortured, or put into labor camps. And then I guess the final thing is that communism replaced Christianity as this is where you get your strength spiritually. The people were told that religion was the opium for the people, that communism was their new god. And so for 70-some years, the Russian people had to live under this big lie. Igor, I see the same things developing here in the United States.
Yes, and that's worrisome because what's worrisome me the most that Christian church is compromising constantly, and they're not giving people the true picture. Pastors are afraid to express what's happening outside the door. And this is called American dream. It no longer exists. We're not living in any American dream. We're living in reality. And reality is we have internal enemies who destroying this nation for a long period of time because they have a plan, because America needs to be removed as a superpower from the world, because the plans is much bigger and much more powerful. The Lucifer have bigger plans. He need to unite the whole globe and worship him finally, eventually, in the end of the days. And we right now in the first phase of the judgment, and this is a financial. What's next? It's very easy to see what's next. Food shortages, water shortages, diseases through starvation of the families, middle class disappearing, bunch of poor people who not happy. We have riots, we have probably organized even civil war somewhere in some places. And finally, republic will be collapsing and be sliced in pieces. And my most worrisome in me, in my guts, and I will tell you that I am afraid that we will go to the level of judgment when America will be invaded by the other forces. And it will be a Russian, it will be a Chinese, it will be a North Korean, Iranian, Cuban, I don't care, but it most possible be a combination of forces will be invading this nation to stop the civil war internal. And that's be the biggest excuse. And this can lead to complete final days of this country.
You mentioned in your email to us that you heard me talking on one of the programs about the vision the Lord gave me in 1998 when I was at TBN, and I saw American cities on fire, and I saw thousands of refugees streaming out of the cities, dumbfounded, dazed, just staggering like zombies, amazed that they were still alive, that they had survived whatever had happened in those cities. And I saw them, some of them were pulling wagons with their children in it, and others were pushing wheelbarrows with their grandparents in them. And I saw people, they were bloodied and scarred and soot-covered and ragged and shoeless. And it was also, it looked like something from Berlin in 1944. The Lord showed you something similar. I think you said about the city of Seattle.
Well, I saw that the needle, that space needle, was actually in the water broken, and I saw the fires in the cities and in the cities in Seattle itself, and you know, in my visions, it's a very panoramic when it's like you actually inside of it.
Yes.
You almost feel the smoke, you almost feel the cry, you almost feel the blood, and it's I think not only invasions and other things and that the problems will be experienced, but also natural disasters. The natural disasters can hit this nation. And I know Dimitri Duduman had visions of, destruction of Las Vegas and LA and partially everything be flooded. Let me put it this way. Visions God gave us to warn the church. To warn the church that we need to be ready. We need to be repenting. We need to be repenting. All these gloomy pictures and blood and death and everything else, this is not who we are. We are with Christ. But we need to find a love inside our hearts to share that truth, this what's common, with the people, with the common man, maybe with a man who not even saved yet. Give people the chance to be saved, to prepare them to this trouble. Of course, we need to be ready.